Brad. Did he leave already? Alright. Bye, teacher Brad. Okay, good morning everyone. Today I will be going over the second goal, second Millennium Development Goal, and the goal is to achieve universal primary education. Now before we start, I want to go over just a couple definitions here so that you understand clearly what we mean by achieve primary education. Primary education is specifically talking about the elementary school, so ages from 4 to 11. It's not any of you guys at this point, but when we want to achieve universal primary education, we're talking about elementary school specifically. And universal, as most of you guys know, is worldwide. So we want to ensure that everyone around the globe has access to the primary education. Before we begin, let's talk about the importance of why primary education is important. I'm about to play a video clip. Is the audio on? We're good? Okay, it's a very short clip, but it's a little painful, so let's get through it. Audio is not on. Can we turn on the audio? Okay.
Recent polls have shown a fifth of Americans can't locate the U.S. on a world map. Why do you think this is?
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe that they should, our education over here in the U.S. should help the U.S. or should help South Africa, and should help the Iraq and the Asian countries, so we will be able to build up our future.
Thank you very much, South Carolina.
So that was a clip of, I think, Miss USA, that was Miss South Carolina. And did anybody understand what she was saying, what her answer was? Did anyone understand it? No? It's okay. It is not because you didn't understand the English, it's because she didn't really give an answer. And I'm just kind of kidding about this. There will be stupid people no matter how educated everybody is. But she's kind of right that we do need to help the South American or South African and Asian countries and such as and whatnot. But let's talk about more seriously, what is the importance of primary education? In terms of the child, what the child benefits from a primary education, it helps develop cognitive, social, emotional, cultural, and physical skills. More importantly, emphasis on the social and cultural. Elementary school is the time when the children start learning the social rules and cultural rules of how to behave with one another by interacting with the peers and adults outside of their household. So many of you guys who went through elementary school probably learned how to make friends through elementary school. Another benefit of a primary education is that it teaches independence and confidence in the child. As they start to grow and develop and learn, they start to learn how to be independent from their parents and how to be confident in themselves. It also improves the literacy rate. That's, elementary school is when you start to learn how to read, which can help lead to success in secondary schooling. So even if they don't necessarily go to secondary school, going through a primary schooling allows them to have the chance to move on to higher education if they want to. Now, in terms of global benefits of primary education, globally, there's a lot of benefits that come from having your children go through a primary education. It helps reduce poverty, increase income, and combat HIV and AIDS. So for poverty, if we were to have the students go through primary education, it would reduce the number of poor worldwide by more than half. In terms of income, 1 extra year of schooling can actually increase an individual's earnings by up to 10%. Combating HIV and AIDS, women with post-primary education are 5 times more likely than illiterate women to be educated in the topic of HIV and AIDS, something that Timington will talk a little bit more about later. For gender equality, 1 additional school year can increase the woman's earning by 10% to up to 20%. It helps also reduce child marriages. Each year of secondary education reduces the likelihood of marrying as a child by 5%. And boosting economic growth. Each additional year of schooling raises average annual gross domestic product, or GDP, growth by 0.37%. So not only are there benefits for the child as an individual, having your children go to primary education and then move on to secondary education can benefit each country and globally, worldwide. So let's talk about what the target is, right? So the goal overall is to achieve primary education, but the very specific target for this goal is to ensure that by 2015, children everywhere, boys and girls alike, will be able to complete a full course of primary schooling. So this goal started in 2020, or not 2020, in 2000. Let's see how the progress was made. This is a progress report chart from the years 2005, 2010, and 2015. And if you look at this chart, we actually made a lot of progress in this goal. From 2005 to 2015, each section of the world has actually increased. There's nothing that actually went backwards. There's no deterioration. We went from either high or low progress to very high progress all throughout. So 2015, you can see that almost all the countries, or almost all the continents are at a high rate in terms of primary education. And in fact, this slide was taken from the website itself. Tremendous progress has been made since 2000 in enrolling children in primary schools. In fact, we went up to 91% from 83% in the year 2000. Interestingly enough, the sub-Saharan Africa, they had the highest increase, but there's still a lot of progress that needs to be made in those developing regions. And right here you see the chart. There's only two places there, sub-Saharan Africa and Oceania, but there has been a lot of progress made globally. So let's look at the 5 countries specifically that has helped in aiding this goal and how they address some of the biggest issues in terms of education today. In Ethiopia, the net enrollment rate for primary school was 79% in 2008, but that was an increase of 95% since 2000. So in a span of 8 years, the enrollment rate increased by 95%. In Tanzania, the primary school enrollment ratio had doubled to 99.6% by 2008 compared to the 1999 rate, thanks to the abolition of school fees. The word abolition means to get rid of. So one of the issues here is tuition, money. Many parents, especially in developing countries, do not have the resources to send their students to school. So by just getting rid of school fees, by getting rid of any kind of tuition fees, more parents are able to enroll their students into these schools. In Bolivia, bilingual education has been introduced for 3 of the most widely used indigenous languages, covering 11% of all primary schools in 2002, and helping expand access to education among indigenous children in remote areas. What this problem addressed was language barriers and the resource of teachers. So there's a lot of teachers that are willing to help teach these schools, but they may not necessarily speak the language that the country needs. And you guys actually know what that feels like. Many of you guys are native Korean speakers and are learning English at the school. You know how hard that is. So could you imagine going to another country where they know no English at all, and they're trying to learn that from teachers who could only speak English? So they have introduced bilingual education, or introduced more teachers that could help teach in those indigenous languages. In Mongolia, innovative mobile schools, or tent schools, were provided to cater to children in the countryside who may otherwise not have regular access to educational services. Over 100 mobile schools have been spread out over 21 provinces. So this addresses the issues of resources. A lot of these countries, especially the remote areas, do not have even school buildings or a place where the school children can gather together to have an education. And so instead of having to use a lot of money to actually build a proper building, they just quickly created these mobile tents that you see over here, where the students can sit inside the tent and learn from a teacher. And so that helped provide access to a lot of education. And then in Egypt, the Egypt's Girls Education Initiative and Food for Education, FFE program, provided free education in girl-friendly schools, and by 2008, 1,000 schools were built and 28,000 students were enrolled. And this addresses the issues of females attending school. Not only is there not enough access to education, there's also this issue that females do not actually go to schools as much as males do. A lot of the females stay behind. A lot of it is cultural differences. So Egypt has addressed that by trying to create girl-friendly schools and trying to promote females being enrolled in the primary schools. Now let's look at the UN-specific programs that have been created to help address this issue. The UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, they have supported building quality primary education systems, and they've also tried to make it like a legal thing for students to be enrolled for 8 to 10 years with uninterrupted education, which is kind of important. Not only do these schools need to, or not only do these children need to be enrolled in the schools, they need to be enrolled without dropping out, basically. So they could maybe go in for first grade, but then drop out of first grade. That does not mean they've achieved primary education. The UN Population Fund, or UNPA, I think, they advocate putting an end to child marriages. So if they have stopped child marriages, it allows the female students to come into the school. And one way they try to stop is to give this incentive that if the girl graduates primary schooling, they will receive a female sheep as a gift, instead of receiving that from, I guess, their prospective husband. So yeah, that's one way they address that issue. The World Food Program, or WFP, they provided free school meals to help build this nutritional balance for them, and they also just encouraged parents to send more females to their classes. And then the UN Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, they partnered with the UNESCO to address problems in politically unstable environments specifically. So one way to help with that was that they created teachers and courses that could help teach these Iraqi children to speak Arabic. Teaching Arabic to non-Arabic speaking Iraqi children so that there's no cultural conflicts when the children are living in that politically unstable environment. So those were the UN programs. Now, what was the target again? Do any of you guys remember what the target was? Which you could easily look at in the book if you flip back. Anybody? Alright, cool. So it seems like you guys need to learn how to read a little bit. But the target was that we would ensure by 2015 that we would achieve this universal education. It is 2019 right now. Do you think we have met the goal? No. In fact, on the website it says that despite great strides in many countries, this target is unlikely to be met, which is a very, very sad statement to have. So yes, the goal was to have this universal education be achieved by 2015. It is 2019, and the goal has not actually been met. And here are the reasons why. To actually achieve that goal by that target date, all children should have been attending classes by 2009. But there were at least still 69 million children who were not going to school in 2008. 31 million of those were in the sub-Saharan Africa, and 18 million of the children were in Southern Asia. And so there are still, despite the progress that we've made, there are still many children who have not received primary education. Another issue, as I mentioned before, is that there are high dropout rates in sub-Saharan Africa. More than 30% of the students drop out after enrolling into primary school. Now, this school states that they want universal primary education. That means that the students actually graduate primary schooling, not just go in and leave in between. And so in the sub-Saharan Africa region, they're not able to actually meet that goal because there's this high dropout rate. There's also still this issue of needing to provide more resources to these schools. They need more classrooms, they need more teachers. In fact, right now in the African region, you need about almost two times more of the amount of the current teachers needed in order to actually help and teach these children. So a lot of the questions you guys have been asking yesterday were, if the UN were not able to complete this goal, how do you expect us to try to come up with something? What can we do? Well, that's something that you guys have to discuss today. I know it seems like a very big goal, kind of like a scary goal to try to do. How can we complete this goal? How can we make this happen when they haven't been able to? That's what you guys are going to talk about today. That's what you all are going to talk with your teachers and figure out ways to help address the issues that are still occurring nowadays. A lot of these posters you'll see throughout the presentations, but I want to focus kind of on this phrase on these posters. And the phrase here is, let's take action. Today I want you guys to really sit down and think about what these issues are and how you can help address them. And don't worry, you know, we're not going to grade you on this. It's not that we want you guys to actually do it, but it's more like we want you to really think about what's happening globally. And like the camp thing says, be a peacemaker. Try to think about more than just yourself. You think about how others in the world could benefit from you. So that's what we're going to do today. All right? Right now, everybody, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll move on to number